in conversation with Kris Leigh. Kris Leigh is a full-time speech-language pathologist. She's lucky to work with middle school and high school students who have multiple disabilities and love teaching them to communicate using alternative form of communication. She grew up in the small town of Troy, Ohio, and currently lives in the Cincinnati area with her high school sweetheart and husband. When she isn't writing, she enjoys spending time with her two adult sons, knitting, crocheting, and curl up with a good book, a dog, and a warm blanket. Woven Soul is a Fox novel. It was written with the help of ADD, the gift of being a highly sensitive person, HSP, and to the appeasement of the characters who directed the story throughout. And on today's episode of our interview, it's my utmost pleasure and joy to have on the show today, Kris Leigh. How are you doing, Kris?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Peter. It's so good to sit down with you.
Absolutely. I'm excited too to have you on the show today. It's quite exciting. We can have a conversation on the writing.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Kris, your novel, Woven Soul, follows through the story of 16-year-old Jansen and Haley, who have been inseparable since birth, coupled with their everlasting friendship until the day Haley has a sudden awakening. I'd love to ask you, for those who are just getting to know about Woven Souls, could you tell us about the making of this book? What inspired you to write Woven Souls?
Yes. So I enjoyed reading the book Twilight.
Oh,
And
right.
when you're reading a book and you think it's going in a particular direction and it's not. So as I was reading it and I thought she was going in these directions, a story just formed in my mind,
Hmm.
similar. So
Oh.
my characters are not the same. I know that one is about vampires. Um, One struggle with mine is that I can't, there is a secret in that I can't share, and it's difficult to
Wow.
talk about without sharing that. So
Wow.
it is not about vampires, but there were just some things that I was hoping she would do in her novel, which is kind of where I took mine. So it's got some Twilight vibes to it.
Wow. That sounds quite amazing, really. I love the sound of it. And now, Kris, your story is set in a small town. Is it a fictional setting or does it exist in the real world? Would you love to talk about that?
Sure, yes. It's set in Troy, Ohio, which is a small town near where I live now.
Interesting.
Um, and well, it's set back in the 1990s. And the reason for that is because I actually wrote it back in the early 2000s. It took me 20 years to publish it just because, well, my niece recently read it and told me that I should publish it.
Wow.
So when I went back to look at it and update it, edit it, they didn't have cell phones in the book, or they
Mm,
did, but it was the old flip phones, there was a lot of
mm,
flipping of the phones. And it was a time when we didn't always carry our cell phones with us. So
mm.
I think writing today can be, technology has not actually helped because there are a lot of situations you can put your characters in that are easily solved if they had a cell
Yeah,
phone. I
absolutely.
didn't want to give them that and bring it up to the current day. So it's set back in the late 90s, early 2000s in Troy, Ohio.
Mm,
And people who are from there will recognize there's a movie theater that I put in there, and it's distinctive because it was very old. There's a scene in there. I don't usually put anything about myself in my books because it seems to
wow.
stifle my creativity.
Mm,
But in this case, my dad and I went to see a movie there one time, and we're just sitting there, and he handed me the armrest. It was
mm,
broken, so he just handed me the armrest. It's kind of the kind
wow.
of movie theater setting that it was. Um,
Wow.
the high school where I grew up is also in the book, and I kept it as it is. And the biggest thing is my characters are part of the music program. They're in the
Mm,
choir, and I was not in the choir, I was in the band. But they have a unique situation where the characters come together in the hallway as kind of like a family, all the friends together. And that's something that we used to do, which I think was really unique. We'd
mm,
meet together as a group every morning in the hallway and just start our high school mornings.
wow. Wow. I love the sound of this, really. I love the sound of it. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love to ask you, for readers who haven't read Woven Souls yet, and without giving much information away, could we have a sneak of what I'd expect in terms of themes picking up the book?
Yes, it is difficult to talk about because again, there's a secret there. So the main
Mm.
character, Ellie, she's either suffering from a mental illness or her
Wow.
best friend has something supernatural going on with him. And so the book centers around her trying to figure out what that is. And there's a it's a friend that she's grown up with her entire life, and then suddenly he distances himself from her, and it's a struggle for her to go through that process. Um, and it is a romance. It's a high school, it's a young adult book. And
Mm.
I kept it tame on the romance end of things. But one of my friends who has read it told me to say that it is hotter than high school love. She said that that's a thing. I have not heard that statement myself, but she said
Wow.
to be sure to tell everyone it's hotter than high school love. So they've
Wow.
enjoyed reading it. Um, yeah, there's a lot of teenage drama in it. There's a little bit of horror, mild horror. Like I said, I kept it kind of tame in that young adult realm, but adults enjoy reading it as well. A lot of
Mm.
Easter eggs in there, little nuggets that kind of clue you into what's going on, that are
Interesting.
easier to pick up through a second kind of a read. It's intriguing, it's mysterious, it's suspenseful. It's got a little of everything.
Wow. I love the sound. Love the sound of this. I love the making of it, really.
Oh, and I know that one of your yes, I know that you've written A Cry for Mercy and How the Demons Leave, and I can't say a whole lot, but the title really intrigued me because it
Wow.
doing a little bit of reading, I think you could understand the story a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
so fun to add. Thank you so much for
We're just,
mentioning that. Now let's talk
of
about your
course.
characterization, Let's talk about your characterization, which is one of the essential part and component of storytelling to me. I'm a huge fan of characterization when it comes to novel. And I'd love to ask you, do you have a favorite character? And also, is there a character you really hate? I'd love to ask you, do you have a favorite one? And do you have one that you do not like?
Interesting. I have a favorite. One of my secondary characters did become my favorite. I
Mhm.
know Mark Twain when he wrote Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. Huck Finn just jumped off the page to him. It wasn't supposed to be a
Oh,
character that was ever supposed to be a main character himself. And my character Charlie has done that for me. My
wow.
characters tend to write themselves, and he adds some humor. He's funny. He's a big guy with a lot of strength. He tries to be gentle, but he isn't always. And there's some humor in there with the way that he interacts with Ellie. Um,
Mm.
so he's been a lot of fun. And a character that I hate, one of the ones I had difficulty writing, there's a character that's in the high school, one of their friends. Her
Oh,
name is Clara, and um, she ends up. So there's another book after this one, and she ends up with a redemption arc. But in this story, she's
wow.
kind of villain like, and I had a hard time writing that because she's outside of my self, I
Wow.
guess.
Wow, I love the sound of it. I think this is such an amazing question I love to ask authors to get to know their favorite characters and if there's one that they particularly hate in the book,
Hmm.
even though they are the one that create those characters.
Yes.
Yeah, it can be fun sometimes, really. And now, Kris, I'm fascinated. I'm always fascinated and surprised about how authors, especially novelists like yourself, craft long sentences and brings words together in a way that it eventually makes a great novel. This always leave me thinking about how exactly they got their inspiration and ideas. Now, as far as writing is concerned, I would love to ask you too, how do you get your inspiration and ideas? Where do they come from?
My characters. It sounds crazy that they
Wow,
talk to me, and I almost have to give
really?
all the credit to them, which is I'm only kidding a little bit. They have full control over the stories, and they talk to me. And it's usually
Wow.
if I'm walking or driving, anytime that I'm doing something else,
Yeah.
and but my mind is able to wander. So if I'm just sitting there at my computer begging them to tell me what's next, they don't talk to me. It's only if I'm
Wow.
in the shower or walking, that's when they start to talk to me. And I don't know, I tend to see my stories in scenes, and I don't always know where I'm
Wow.
going, or I think I know where I'm going. And
Mm.
if I get it wrong, they tell me, or they'll
Wow.
stop talking to me. And then when they start talking to me again, I start to realize, oh, this isn't really where the story is supposed to go. It's supposed to go this direction. So
Wow.
it's kind of fun. I always have a cast of characters in my head. I'm never bored.
Well, I like the fact that you mentioned that your characters talk to you. That sounds quite amazing to me. Basically, every character is gonna talk to you. Okay, you should be the response to this person. You should be the response to this conversation. Make it this way. It's amazing to hear this from you, really. It's amazing to know, how you get your inspiration and ideas. Because to me, I've got, words speaking to my ear, more like, someone telling you to pick up your pen, write this. This is the next thing, write this line, write this, this is a word. And they just speak those words to your hearing. That's to me with poetry. And it's amazing to get to know from a novelist like you that your character speaks to you too. So I'm quite intrigued, and that's quite amazing to say, really.
Yes, I haven't talked to anyone else who experiences that. For me, they don't
Oh.
tell me what to do. It's more like I hear them talking to each other. So for me,
Wow.
it's not, yeah, they're not talking directly to me, but I just hear their conversations. They let me in.
Wow.
Yes, but I was
Wow.
going to mention in reading yours that it does sound like you have that going on as well. The depth that
Wow.
you get into it has to come from something like that. It has to be from
Mm.
the characters talking to you in some way.
Wow. That's quite amazing to know. I love hearing this from you. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for sharing. I love this. And I can relate to it. That's why I'm quite surprised. Like you hear the characters speaking together, miss like you're somewhere observing two people having a conversation, unimaginary people having a conversation, and you're not
Yes,
eavesdropping on what they're saying and writing it down.
yes,
It's amazing how writers get about with their inspiration. That's quite lovely to know. I love the sound of it.
yes. When I told my husband, he thought I was a little, crazy there, but you can stop it. They don't have to talk to you, but I welcome it in.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you, Kris. And now let's talk about criticism. As authors, we all have different ways of reacting to feedbacks and criticism of our works. I'm curious to know your opinion about criticism. How do you react to negative reviews of your books if you've ever had one in time past?
I'm good with criticism. I welcome it because I figure if anybody has difficulty with any part of the book, that means that other people will as well. So it's something that
Mm,
I need to adjust. But I haven't had a lot of negative criticism with this book. I've only had positive reviews so far. It hasn't been out very long though, so bring those reviews in. Let me know. It helps with
wow.
future books in the series as well. But I love, I'm one of the strange ones. I love the editing process. I know a lot of people
Mm,
are afraid of that, but I enjoy seeing what somebody else's perspective is and helping to make a sentence better or a theme better. Or, sometimes you're so close to the work that you don't see the problems that somebody else might see. So you have
mm,
to be open to that and hear it. I know when I'm helping somebody else with their work, I'm very much about positive things as well. So for every negative that I have, I'll try to throw out 10 wonderful things that I like. I think there's but yes, I'm good with criticism.
wow. Thank you for sharing. I love your take on criticism, really. So thank you so much for sharing. And now, Kris, I'd love to ask you, what is your writing process and what is it like writing with ADD? Would you like to talk about that?
Backwards is what it is.
Wow.
It's backwards. Um, I don't write chronologically at all, and I have tried to. If I take notes and if I think I know where I'm going, that's when
Mm,
again the characters just stop talking because my ideas are not where the story ends up. I do my best when I have a small idea and I sit down and the story just starts to come out.
mm,
So I can write chapter 13 and then one and then four and then two. Um, right now, even just with the books, book one is finished, obviously, it's published.
wow.
Book three is almost finished, but I wrote the end first and then I wrote beginning.
Wow.
Book four is completely finished and two is close as well. But I mean, even the books have been written out of order. So it just, whenever it comes to me, I get it down on paper.
Wow. This is quite amazing to know, really. This is so amazing to know. I love your answers to this question, really. Really made for an interesting discussion. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Now, Kris, I'd also love to ask you, apart from Woven Souls, do you have any other works you've authored or maybe currently working?
Yes, so some things that I'm working on. This series, I mentioned it a little bit before, it has kind of exploded for me. So
Mm,
there are a couple more, but originally it was just going to be one, and then it ended up being two, and now I believe we're up to six. Um,
wow.
So 2 is right now out with beta readers, and 4 is complete, but it's that one is takes the perspective of another character that hasn't nobody would know who that is yet. So, but it's just something fun that I've been working on.
Wow.
And that one has been fun because the character is a male character, and I've never written from a male point of view before. And he's also has a heavy dialect.
Wow.
And it's written from his perspective. So to me, that was a challenge to write the entire thing from his perspective and with a fairly heavy dialect of his.
Wow.
It's been fun.
I love the
Yeah.
sound of that. And it's quite amazing. You've got quite a lot of, works ongoing. And I wanted to ask you from your answer to that, how long should we expect? Is it going to be more like 3 series or 4 series or 5 or 6 or 7 or it's a standalone? How long are you carrying us? Yeah, let me put it that way.
I know that the current, so the Woven Souls one is 3, and then it's the first 3 center around Jansen and Ellie. After that, it starts to take on a life with some of the other characters. And right now I'm up to 6. So the first 3, I want their story to just kind of take a back seat, wrap that up. Yeah, that's kind of what's in my head right now. We'll see where it goes.
I love the sound of that. And I'd like you to show the book to the camera once again, just so we can see what it looks like. Yeah, beautiful cover, The Woven Souls. And it's amazing how you came about the title. Would you love to talk about that? I think it's an interesting to ask authors, how do you get the ideas for your title? Because if someone should ask me, my titles are divinely chosen. Like I get to hear them even before I start writing. And my titles, I can't even explain it. I can have a long conversation on my title alone. Yeah, so I'd love to ask you, how do you come about your title?
That's a weighted question. Your answer is so thoughtful there. The book itself is about souls and about the soul searching that the characters do. And in it, their souls, again, you have to read it to quite understand, but their souls become intertwined in a very literal sense. Yes, and I know the whole cover is very symbolic of the story. My roommate from college did the cover art for me. And on the inside, if you do the hardback, and that is very symbolic of the story as well. It's that soul, and the colors are very important in the story. And beautiful. I guess the title is just that their souls become very interwoven.
I love this version. That's the hardcover version, right?
Yes.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can feel it from here. I wish it
just because my friend did it. It's something I can brag about. I'm not very good about bragging about my own work, but I can brag about her work. She did a fantastic job.
It's beautiful, really.
On my cover.
Yeah, I can say it's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love it. And now I'm curious to know if you experienced any challenges while writing your book. If there is any, could you share with us what challenge it is and how you ultimately overcame it?
Self-confidence, and I'm not sure I have overcome that or ever will. That has been my biggest challenge, which is why it took me 20 years to publish this.
Wow.
And then, of course, marketing. I think a lot of us who write, or I think a lot of us who write, would be very happy to just sit in a room by ourselves with a cup of coffee and just write. I find it very difficult to put myself out there and to market the book.
Wow.
So that has been a huge challenge.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing. That's quite lovely to know. And now, also, what sort of advice do you have for other writers who are still struggling with publishing a book? What would you advise people in this category?
Put yourself out there. Tell everybody about the book. I'm still struggling with this one myself. So very new out there. It's only been published since October, so I don't have a lot, but yeah, it's definitely worth the struggle. We've all got some good stories to tell, and don't listen to the negative criticism. Just listen to your own heart and keep going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your words. And I'm hopeful that viewers, including myself, would love to utilize it. Now, Christy, in case we have some viewers who are currently watching this interview, I would love to get a copy of your book. On what platform is it available on for purchase?
It is on Amazon most easily. Because I think it's because I don't have as many reviews yet that it's harder to search. So I think you have to put in the whole Woven Souls by Kris Leigh and it'll pop up that way. And I think
Okay.
that you're able to Google it as well. I know that it's available through Barnes and Nobles, for instance, some bookstores like that, but not in the stores. I have it in some stores here locally, but the best way is just online to Google or to go onto Amazon and put in Woven Souls by Kris Leigh.
That's great. And I left a link in the discussion part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Christine's books directly on Amazon and also on other platform. So thank you so much, Christy, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It's awesome having this conversation with you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. It's quite lovely to have a conversation with you. I love